7 Stoic Habits That Build an Unbreakable Mind. No excuses, the blueprint of mental steel. Weakness is not born, it's trained, the same way strength is. Every day you rehearse who you will become through the habits you tolerate, the emotions you indulge, and the excuses you repeat. Most people train fragility. They just don't call it that. They call it comfort, self-care, or waiting for motivation. But comfort is the gym of decay, and every repetition of laziness shapes a weaker mind. The Stoics knew this long before science proved it. Seneca wrote that softness breeds slavery. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal and loss, yet trained calm like a soldier drills precision. They understood what modern psychology confirms. Discipline is neural conditioning. Every thought repeated becomes a circuit. Every emotion entertained becomes identity. If you don't choose your habits consciously, your impulses will choose them for you. An unbreakable mind is not given by birth or by books. It's constructed through friction. 7 habits forged in the fire of choice. They are not rules to follow. They are weapons to remember. Each one cuts an illusion you've been living under. Each one replaces reaction with command. But here's the truth you avoid. Strength isn't built when life feels easy. It's built when you do what your emotions hate. Pain, boredom, fear. These are not enemies. They are resistance training for the soul. The Stoic builds endurance not by escaping chaos, but by walking into it with structure. Today you'll learn the 7 habits that make the mind immune to chaos. The disciplines that Marcus Aurelius lived, Epictetus taught, and Viktor Frankl proved under the worst conditions imaginable. These habits don't just control emotion. They reprogram it. They strip away the noise, leaving only awareness, will, and order. Modern psychology calls it behavioral rewiring. The Stoics called it virtue. Both describe the same process, repetition until identity shifts. You don't become disciplined by wishing. You become disciplined by repetition until desire obeys purpose. You say you want strength, but do you practice stillness when insulted? You say you value peace, but do you refuse distraction when it whispers? The Stoic doesn't wait to feel ready. Readiness is a myth built by the undisciplined. This is not a motivational sermon, it's a protocol, a map for the daily war between your higher self and your primitive impulses. And in this war, neutrality is surrender. If you want clarity, prepare for discomfort. If you want control, practice sacrifice. If you want freedom, accept constraint. Because the mind that fears limitation will always be ruled by it. So before we begin, remember this. Every habit you train is either making you stronger or weaker. There's no middle ground. Let's begin building the mind that doesn't break. The habits that free you will hurt first. That's how you know they're real. Habit 1. The discipline of emotional neutrality. The first habit of an unbreakable mind is simple to explain and brutal to live. You do not let your emotions speak first, ever. You let reality speak first, then reason. Emotion comes last, not as commander, but as servant. Most people invert this order. They feel, then react, then justify. Their anger acts, their fear retreats, their envy poisons, and only depois vema disculpa logica. That's not personality, that's slavery. Stoicism calls this confusion the root of suffering. Psychology calls it emotional impulsivity. Both describe the same disease, a mind that obeys whatever it feels. Emotional neutrality is not coldness. It is the discipline of staying at 0 before choosing a response. 0 is not numb. 0 is clear. 0 is the state where facts are seen without the filter of ego. When an insult comes, the neutral mind does not instantly translate it into attack. It first registers words, tone, context. Then it decides what meaning to assign. That space is your freedom. Marcus Aurelius trained this habit daily. He wrote reminders to himself like a man who knew his own weakness. Remember, It's not the thing that harms you, but your judgment about it. Epictetus taught the same principle. Between what happens and what you feel about it, there is choice. Viktor Frankl proved this in Hell. If they could practice neutrality in war, prison, and horror, you can practice it in traffic, arguments, and rejection. Modern psychology backs this with brutal clarity. When you pause before reacting, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, long-term planning, and self-control. When you do not pause, your amygdala fires first. That is the animal brain, designed for survival, not truth. Emotional neutrality is training the human mind to override the animal reflex. You build this habit in small drills. You feel the surge, anger, shame, fear, jealousy, frustration. Instead of speaking, you breathe once, twice, 3 times. You name the emotions silently. Anger, not "I am angry." Fear, not "I am afraid." The difference seems small, but it separates identity from impulse. You are not your feelings, you are the one who decides what they become. Schopenhauer believed that most suffering is wasted because it is never examined. Neutrality forces examination. You don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You ask, "What exactly is happening now? What are the facts? What is my story and what is my ego?" That question alone saves you from half the chaos you normally create. The habit is this: delay expression until perception is clean. No instant replies, no quick texts sent from rage, no decisions taken at emotional peak. The Stoic IronMind learns to let the wave rise and fall before moving. Emotion becomes weather, you become the climate. Stable, predictable, unmoved by storms. This is the foundation of mental toughness, discipline, and emotional control. Without neutrality, every other Stoic habit becomes performance. With neutrality, every reaction becomes chosen. That is the first layer of an unbreakable mind. The world will not stop provoking you. People will not stop disappointing you. Life will not stop striking you. But once you master the discipline of emotional neutrality, nothing will move you without your consent. The question is simple, the habit is not. When the next storm rises inside your chest, will you react like an animal or respond like a Stoic iron mind? Habit 2, the ritual of daily discomfort. Strength does not grow in comfort. It grows in controlled friction. Every Stoic understood this. Every psychologist who studies resilience confirms it. The mind becomes unbreakable the same way the body becomes powerful, through voluntary hardship, repeated with intention. Daily discomfort is the antidote to the soft mind, the mind that collapses under pressure because it has never faced resistance. Most people avoid anything that feels unpleasant. They run from cold, silence, effort, rejection, stillness, and truth. Then they wonder why they break when life removes their comforts. A fragile mind isn't a curse, it's a consequence. Marcus Aurelius trained adversity in thought long before it arrived in reality. Epictetus, once a slave, taught that a person who avoids discomfort also avoids mastery. Nietzsche sharpened the idea with cruelty. He who has a why can bear almost any how. Frankl proved it, meaning makes pain bearable, but avoidance makes pain fatal. Daily discomfort is not suffering for suffering's sake. It is the discipline of choosing small, controlled difficulties so you don't collapse under real ones. It is psychological training, behavioral inoculation, a rehearsal for life's unpredictable blows. The ritual is simple. Choose one discomfort every day that your weak self hates. Something that demands will instead of emotion. Something that cuts through excuses. Something that makes your primitive brain resist. Cold showers, waking before desire agrees, silence instead of scrolling, finishing tasks without negotiating with your moods, holding your ground in conversations instead of shrinking, saying no when fear wants yes. When you do this, something rewires. The brain learns that pain does not kill you. The mind learns that discomfort expands you. Identity learns that you can act despite resistance. This is the foundation of discipline, not motivation, not inspiration, repeated voluntary friction. Psychology calls this process exposure and reinforcement. Philosophy calls it fortification of character. Neuroscience calls it neuroplastic adaptation to stress. The Stoics called it preparation for fate, the art of meeting reality without fear. Daily discomfort is honest. It reveals who you are without disguise. When you choose something hard every day, you become intimate with your own limits, and then you push them. You learn to walk toward the thing you once avoided. You stop living like a victim of your preferences. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop waiting for perfect conditions that will never come. This habit builds the mental callus you need to act with clarity when the world hits you unexpectedly. A person who practices discomfort daily is not surprised by adversity. They are sharpened by it. Their soul already knows how to stand when everything feels heavy. Their mind already knows how to respond when everything goes wrong. Your excuses will scream. Your emotions will resist. Your comfort will bargain. That is the point. Discomfort is not punishment, it is training. And if you refuse it, life will force it on you anyway, without mercy, without preparation, without your consent. Choose your discomfort now, or be destroyed by it later. Habit 3. The practice of radical responsibility. Nothing weakens the mind faster than the habit of blaming. Nothing strengthens it faster than the discipline of ownership. Radical responsibility is the Stoic habit that modern psychology confirms as the cornerstone of mental toughness. You stop outsourcing your problems, your reactions, your failures, and your emotional states. You take the entire weight of your life back into your own hands. Most people never do this. They cling to excuses because excuses feel warm. Excuses explain weakness without requiring change. Excuses give pain a villain so the ego stays innocent. But innocence maintained through blame is just cowardice with a prettier mask. Seneca said it plainly. The man who blames fate will never change himself. Viktor Frankl added the modern blow. Between stimulus and response, you have responsibility, not freedom from life, but freedom within life. Radical responsibility is not self-blame, it is self-command. You don't say, everything is my fault. You say, everything is my response. The difference defines strength. Fault is passive, response is active. When something goes wrong, the fragile mind searches for someone to accuse. The disciplined mind searches for leverage, adjustment, action. Psychology shows that people who adopt responsibility develop higher resilience, faster recovery from setbacks, and deeper emotional control. The brain shifts from victim mode to problem-solving mode. Blame triggers helplessness. Ownership triggers adaptation. Kierkegaard described it as the leap from despair to selfhood. The moment you admit you are the one shaping the meaning of every blow you take. Radical responsibility demands that you stop narrating your life as something happening to you and start narrating it as something you are shaping. You acknowledge every flaw without shame, every fear without denial, every failure without collapse. You confront your own role with brutal clarity. Schopenhauer would call this honesty the first victory over self-delusion. Jung would call it integrating the shadow. Epictetus would call it reclaiming your inner authority. The habit is practiced in 3 parts. First, awareness. You catch yourself blaming, even subtly, and you stop mid-sentence. Second, ownership. You ask the only question a Stoic mind respects: what is my move? Third, execution. You take action without waiting for perfect emotion, reassurance, or validation. But here is the hard truth most will never accept. Responsibility feels heavy at first because you're carrying what you used to drop. But over time, that weight becomes strength. That load becomes structure. That discipline becomes freedom. The person who refuses responsibility becomes a puppet pulled by emotions and circumstances. The person who embraces it becomes a force, self-directed, self-governed, self-defined. Radical responsibility builds an unbreakable mind because it eliminates the illusion that someone else is coming to save you. No savior is coming. No rescue is guaranteed. No apology from the world will fix your internal disorder. The moment you understand this, you stop waiting and start building. You stop wishing and start acting. You stop collapsing and start commanding. The world respects the person who takes responsibility. More importantly, the world cannot break the person who does. Or ChatGPT dice. Habit 4. The cultivation of unwavering focus. A weak mind scatters, a strong mind cuts. Your attention is the sharpest blade you own, yet most people treat it like a child's toy, dropped, misplaced, handed to anything loud or convenient. The modern world monetizes distraction, but the Stoic mind weaponizes attention. Focus is not a skill, it is a form of self-respect, and without it, every other habit collapses. Marcus Aurelius wrote warnings to himself about mental drift. He feared not death, but dispersion, a mind pulled apart by every impulse. Epictetus demanded that students guard attention as if guarding their freedom. Modern psychology echoes the same principle. Divided focus destroys depth, increases anxiety, weakens discipline, and rewires the brain for addiction to stimulation. Distraction is not harmless, it is mental erosion. Unwavering focus is the habit of directing your awareness deliberately, holding it ruthlessly, and withdrawing it instantly from what degrades it. This is not productivity culture, this is identity. You become what you repeatedly attend to. A distracted mind becomes chaotic. A focused mind becomes sovereign. Nietzsche called this the power of the long will, the ability to hold a direction long after emotion fades. Frankl demonstrated that focus on meaning can sustain a person through unthinkable suffering. To cultivate unwavering focus, you begin with subtraction. You eliminate the noise that trains your mind to fracture. You remove the environment's apps and impulses that hijack attention. You stop treating your phone like a limb and your boredom like a crisis. You give your mind the silence it needs to sharpen. Montaigne warned that a mind constantly stimulated loses the ability to be alone with itself. Jung warned that overstimulation blinds you to your inner world. The Stoics warned that a scattered mind cannot choose virtue because it cannot choose anything. Then comes the second layer, immersion. When you do something, anything, you enter it fully. No half measures, no divided awareness, no mental multitasking, which is nothing but rapid task switching that burns clarity. You train your mind to stay with one thought, one task, one purpose at a time. Psychology calls this deep work. Philosophy calls it presence. The Stoic calls it commitment to reality. The third layer is withdrawal. You remove your attention from everything unworthy of it. Arguments designed to provoke. Reels that steal minutes and return nothing. People whose conversations drain meaning instead of expanding it. You do not fight distraction, you starve it. You treat your attention as a currency too valuable to spend on triviality. At first, your mind will rebel. It craves the chaos it has been conditioned to love. It wants the easy dopamine hits, the endless scrolling, the constant noise. But focus grows through resistance. The more you deny the impulse to scatter, the stronger your internal command becomes. A focused mind sees truth faster, acts cleaner, suffers less, builds more, lives with intention. And the person who can command their attention can command their emotions, their discipline, their identity, and their direction in life. Focus is not just productivity. Focus is power. and the world cannot manipulate a man who decides where his awareness goes. Habit 5. The art of silent self-confrontation. Most people fear silence because silence removes the last place to hide. Noise keeps you distracted. Noise keeps you comfortable. Noise keeps you away from the one enemy you've been avoiding your entire life: yourself. A mind becomes unbreakable only when it can sit alone, without stimulation, and face everything it has been running from. The Stoics mastered this long before psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not as a book, but as a battlefield, a private war against illusions, ego, and self-deception. Epictetus demanded daily examinations of thought and behavior with the precision of a surgeon. Kierkegaard called self-honesty the path to becoming a single individual, not a collection of borrowed opinions. Jung warned that unless you confront your shadow, it will govern your life. Silent self-confrontation is the habit of stripping away the noise long enough to observe your mind without distortion. You look at your desires without embellishment, your fears without denial, your contradictions without excuses. You stop narrating and start witnessing. Modern psychology calls this metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking with clarity. The Stoics called it self-scrutiny. Both are doors to mastery. This habit demands stillness, not comfort. You sit in a room without your phone, without distractions, without escape routes, and you let your thoughts rise. At first you will feel agitation. The primitive brain despises silence because silence exposes truth. But the disciplined mind sees this discomfort as gold, the beginning of awareness, the beginning of structure, the beginning of control. In silence, your patterns become visible. You see where your discipline collapses. You see how your emotions manipulate your choices. You see the difference between what you say you value and what your behavior reveals. This is painful knowledge. But pain is information. Pain is feedback. Pain is the map out of delusion. Self-confrontation is not self-punishment. It is self-alignment. You stop pretending you're the person you want to be and start building the person you need to be. You detach from ego long enough to see the truth clearly. Schopenhauer said, "The greatest freedom is the ability to stand in honest relation to oneself." Frankl said, "Meaning appears when you stop lying to your inner world." This habit works because it exposes the gap between intention and action. Once you see the gap, you cannot unsee it. And the mind that sees truth cannot return to weakness without feeling its cost. Silent confrontation transforms identity. You stop being a character controlled by impulses and become an author shaping the script. A person who cannot sit alone is a person who fears their own mind. A person who masters solitude becomes unshakable. Silence becomes a forge. Reflection becomes a blade. Awareness becomes armor. And you begin to live with the sharpness of someone who knows exactly who they are and who they refuse to be. The world becomes quieter when your inner world stops screaming. And an inner world that no longer screams is a mind that no pressure can break. Habit 6. The discipline of purposeful action. Intention is worthless without motion. Desire is useless without direction. And knowledge means nothing if it never becomes behavior. The unbreakable mind is not built by what you think, believe, or plan. It is built by what you do repeatedly, especially when emotion is absent and excuses are loud. Purposeful action is the habit that turns philosophy into identity. It is the spine of discipline and the death of procrastination. Most people confuse movement with progress. They stay busy to avoid confronting the real work. They chase tasks that feel productive because they fear the ones that redefine them. But busyness is cowardice in disguise. Seneca warned that most people waste life not in inactivity, but in meaningless activity. Nietzsche saw the same flaw. A life spent running from the one thing that demands responsibility, choosing a direction. Purposeful action is not random effort. It is the deliberate execution of what matters most, regardless of how you feel. Emotion no longer determines movement. Commitment does. Viktor Frankl showed that meaning drives endurance. Jung observed that purpose organizes the chaos of the psyche. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to act as if every day were the last, not recklessly but consciously. The discipline works in 3 layers. The first is clarity, identifying what actually moves your life forward. Not fantasies, not distractions, not emotional impulses. You define the one task that creates disproportionate impact. The action aligned with your highest aim, your deepest values, your chosen identity. That task becomes your anchor. The second layer is execution without negotiation. You act not because it feels good, but because it is required. You eliminate the inner debate that weakens you. You stop checking motivation like a weather report. Motivation is a child, purpose is a commander. The Stoics called this virtue in motion, right action carried out without hesitation. Psychology calls it behavioral consistency. Discipline calls it adulthood. The third layer is endurance. When resistance hits, boredom, fear, impatience, fatigue, you continue. Resistance is not a signal to stop. It is a sign you are finally training the part of your mind that needs it most. Every time you push through, you reinforce a neural pathway that says, I act because I decide, not because I feel. This is how identity changes. This is how weakness dies. Purposeful action transforms time. Days stop blurring into each other. Life gains direction instead of drift. Decisions become sharper. Behavior becomes cleaner. You waste less. You build more. You stop living reactively and start living architecturally. You become the one who shapes events instead of the one shaped by them. A mind that acts with purpose becomes immune to chaos because it no longer depends on external conditions to move. It carries its own momentum. It knows where it stands. It knows where it's going. And the person who knows where they're going cannot be manipulated, distracted, or derailed by trivial noise. You don't rise by wishing. You rise by acting with precision. Purpose is not an idea. Purpose is a discipline. And discipline practiced daily becomes destiny. Habit 7. The consistency that outlasts emotion. Everyone wants strength. Almost no one wants repetition. This is the final habit because it decides the fate of all the others. Consistency is the quiet force that transforms discipline into identity, emotion into structure, and philosophy into a lived reality. It is the habit that outlasts motivation, mood, fatigue, insecurity, and chaos. Without consistency, every other virtue dies in theory. With consistency, even flawed effort becomes unstoppable. Most people fail not because they are weak, but because they are inconsistent. They start when inspired and stop when challenged. They push when excited and quit when bored. They confuse emotional intensity with commitment, forgetting that emotion is temporary and transformation is cumulative. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that character is forged through steady repetition, not bursts of inspiration. Epictetus insisted that freedom is earned by practicing the same principles until they become reflex. Viktor Frankl proved that meaning survives only through repeated action aligned with purpose. Consistency is not about doing everything. It's about doing what matters most, again and again, until who you want to be becomes who you are. Psychology calls this identity consolidation. Nietzsche called it the long obedience in the same direction. Jung understood it as the gradual alignment between your conscious values and your unconscious patterns. Stoicism saw it as virtue through habit, the transformation of the soul through repeated right action. The modern world worships novelty. The unbreakable mind worships continuity. You don't need new habits every week. You need the courage to repeat the same essential habits long after the excitement fades. The mind becomes disciplined when routine becomes a sacred contract with yourself. Not a suggestion, not a negotiation, a contract. You show up because showing up is who you are. But consistency demands sacrifice. It requires you to abandon the identity that collapses under emotional weather. It forces you to detach from your moods, cravings, and self-sabotaging patterns. You stop waiting for the perfect moment because you understand that the perfect moment is created through consistency, not discovered by accident. Modern psychology is blunt. Consistency rewires the brain, stabilizes identity, reduces anxiety, and increases emotional regulation. Your nervous system learns that action is predictable, not chaotic. This habit builds pressure tolerance. It trains your mind to endure long-term struggle without losing direction. It strengthens your ability to stay committed when effort feels thankless, when progress feels invisible, when life feels uncooperative. Consistency is the antidote to emotional fragility. It gives your life architecture, structure strong enough to withstand storms. Every day you repeat the essentials, you increase the gap between your old self and your chosen self. You become the kind of person who follows through, the kind of person who doesn't collapse, the kind of person who remains disciplined even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. And this is the truth most people avoid. Consistency is not glamorous. It is not exciting, it is not dramatic, but it is the only force capable of transforming a fragile mind into an iron mind. The dramatic moments don't build you, the daily repetitions do. The discipline you repeat is the destiny you create. A mind that shows up every day cannot be broken. A mind that outlasts its own emotions cannot be stopped. Consistency is the habit that turns the ordinary into the inevitable. The forging of the unbreakable mind. You now know the 7 habits, but knowing is nothing. Living them is everything. An unbreakable mind is not built in a single act of courage, but in thousands of small decisions made when no one is watching, when your emotions rebel, when comfort tempts you back into who you used to be. These habits are not lessons, they are tools, weapons, mirrors. If you carry them, they will carve strength into your character. If you ignore them, life will carve weakness into your fate. The Stoics understood this brutal truth. Life does not reward intention. It rewards discipline. It rewards clarity. It rewards the person who refuses to be ruled by impulses, excuses, and fragile emotions. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself as if training a soldier. Epictetus spoke like a commander, shaping warriors of the mind. Nietzsche challenged the world to rise above its comforts, to build willpower instead of worshipping feelings. Frankl proved that meaning is the ultimate fuel for endurance. Even in the darkest conditions a human can face. You are not asked to become invulnerable, you are asked to become responsible. Not perfect, but deliberate. Not fearless, but disciplined. The unbreakable mind is not a mind without pain. It is a mind that has learned to turn pain into precision, chaos into clarity, discomfort into identity, and repetition into strength. The world will try to pull you back into softness, into distraction, into self-pity, into excuses disguised as self-compassion. But your habits decide whether you remain a prisoner of emotion or become a commander of it. Your habits decide whether you drift through life or move through it with purpose. Your habits decide whether your mind fractures under pressure or stands so firm that pressure breaks against you. This is the moment you choose what you will become. Not tomorrow, not when motivation returns, now. Because every day you delay, your weaker self grows stronger. And every day you act, your stronger self sharpens. You are building a mind that can endure adversity, reject distraction, embrace responsibility, stay present in truth, act with purpose, and rise through consistency. That mind cannot be manipulated. That mind cannot be collapsed. That mind cannot be owned by fear, chaos, or circumstance. You are not sculpting a better mood. You are sculpting a better human being, the kind of human being the Stoics would recognize. The kind of human being psychology would call resilient. The kind of human being the world respects because the world cannot shake him. Your habits determine your strength determines your destiny, and your destiny begins the moment you stop negotiating with weakness and start acting like the person you were meant to become. Cold philosophy, unbreakable mind. This is the Stoic IronMind.